2 or 3 years ago, I made a video about detransitioners and how there are people out there that do transition, but then months, if not years down the line, they look at themselves and they say, this is not who I really am, and they detransition. And I showed stories. I showed how people talked about how they got into it and then they got out of it. And I also showed that there are people out there who think that detransitioning and the topic of it is somehow transphobic and infringes upon the rights of trans individuals. And I think we could all agree that someone sharing their story of transitioning and detransitioning is not transphobic. It's somebody telling their story, because as much as people want to pretend like one thing has nothing but positives, in reality, there's some negatives that do deserve to be discussed, especially when you're bringing children into the conversation, because we've seen there are people who think that children who believe right now that they should be acting good so that a fat guy can come into their house and bring them gifts have the mental capabilities to understand that they're a girl in a boy's body and vice versa. And cards on the table, I'm gonna keep saying that that really doesn't correlate or make sense. But you know what? Tis be how tis don't. And there are doctors out there who will have conversations about how this is a real thing and we should start considering it, and this should be something that we analyze, especially when the topic of mental health comes about, because you've heard people say that when you're refusing this care for children as they grow older, it'll affect their mental health, and that they need to be on these things, I believe they're called puberty blockers, because without them being on puberty blockers, it'll affect their mental health. Well, somebody, a doctor who was on task to do research about this subject, has let you all know that she purposefully didn't publish information that would lead to that conversation for reasons that I'm pretty certain you could expect. A prominent doctor and trans rights advocate admitted she deliberately withheld publication of a $10 million taxpayer-funded study on the effect of puberty blockers on American children after finding no evidence that they improve patients' mental health. Dr. Joanna Olson Kennedy told the New York Times that she believes the study would be weaponized by critics of transgender care for kids, and that the research could one day be used in court to argue we shouldn't use blockers. Critics, including one of Olson Kennedy's fellow researchers on the study, said the decision flies in the face of research standards and deprives the public of really important science in the field where Americans remain firmly divided. Because when you have a society of people all engaged on the topic, whether if they're for it or against it, and you hire people to do studies on this, and they spend time, effort, energy, most importantly, $10 million on said subject, you should disclose that to the public so that they know, hey, some of this is true, some of this is not true, or it's complete bull, and we should be trying to have a conversation about how this really doesn't do anything, and a bunch of people on TikTok are lying with made-up statistics and stats. It's beneficial to have this in public manner in society, but I guess old St. Jane over here wanted to make sure that everybody is safe and structured and no one's mean to each other. For the National Institutes of Health funded study, researchers chose 95 kids who had an average age of 11 and gave them puberty blocking drugs starting in 2015. The treatments are meant to delay the onset of bodily changes like the development of breasts or the deepening of the voice. After following up with the youths for 2 years, the treatments did not improve the state of their mental health, which Olson Kennedy chalked up to the kids being in really good shape both when they started and concluded the 2-year treatment. However, the Times points out that her rosy assessment contradicts earlier data recorded by the researchers, which found around 1/4 of study participants were depressed or suicidal before receiving treatment. The result also does not support the findings of a 2011 Dutch study, which the primary scientific research cited proponents of giving kids puberty blockers. That study of 70 kids found that children treated with puberty blockers reported better mental health and fewer behavioral and emotional problems. Olson Kennedy, the outlet points out, is one of the country's leading advocates for providing gender-affirming care to adolescents and regularly provides expert testimony in legal challenges to state bans on such procedures, which have taken root in more than 20 states. When asked by the Times why the results have not been made public after 9 years, she said, "I do not want our work to be weaponized. It has to be exactly on point, clear and concise, and takes time, aka you don't want people to see that you're really not finding anything that proves your assessment, and you don't want to be chastised for it, you don't want to be made fun of, and you don't want to be told that all of this is a drastic waste of time because doing so would make you feel bad, and somehow doing your job is something that offends you to that point. She then flat out admitted that she was afraid that the lack of mental health improvements borne out by the study could one day be used in court to argue we shouldn't use blockers. A Washington Post KFF Trans in America survey found that 68% of U.S. adults are against providing puberty blockers to trans-identifying youth ages 10 to 14, and 58% oppose hormone treatments for those ages 15 to 17. Boston College clinical and research psychologist Amy Tisselman, who was one of the original researchers on the study, pointed out the obvious contradiction in withholding scientific evidence on the grounds that it doesn't match an expected conclusion. I understand the fear about being weaponized, but it's really important to get the science out there because people want to know. People were dying to know this, to the point where you put in money to research this. Your personal feelings about trans people, trans kids means nothing when you're choosing not to disperse information that people were collectively invested in. Whether if you were for it or against it, this is information that you were funded to do research on, and you need to disclose that to the fucking public so that they can further be knowledgeable about the fucking subject. And all these takes where people are saying this is affecting mental health, this improves mental health, and not getting it destroys mental health. This needs to be out into the public, because if it's not, you're going to have more dipshits thinking, oh, my child's going to be suffering if I don't do this care for them. Oh, my child is going to improve their suicidal ideations if we do this thing for them. And in reality, people craving information were arguably desperate to learn about this so that they could have some form of information in regards to their child and their mental health, because maybe if they do this, it improves. Maybe if they don't, their child is going to end up dead. And whose fault that's going to be? The parent who's feeling sorry that they didn't do enough for their child, and you, the doctor, fucked it up because, oh, your personal fifis and you don't want to be scrutinized and attacked for it. Fuck that. You had more people saying that they were shocked and disturbed that this doctor decided that she was the one who could decide all of this information and not disclose it to the public. And it's an entirely sketchy thing to be a part of, because you have, I've said it at least 3 times, you have people invested into this and they wanted to know, to either strengthen their resolve or strengthen their critique. And you feeling that, oh, a bunch of people are going to rain down upon you. That's your job as a scientist, as a researcher, to research about these subjects, because they're being talking points on news stations by politicians, by people who think they know everything. And it's within your best judgment that after it's all done, even if it's not the outcome you want, you disclose that to the public so that, hey, everybody put your pitchforks down and listen to this research. Read what we found. Read our information about how not doing or doing affects mental health. And because you didn't do that, that will create more distrust around the topic. Congratulations. You didn't help trans people. You fucked it up for them even more. I know you tried so hard, you white savior, but once again, I am right. White saviors ruin everything regarding minority groups. They don't help, they hinder. They are not helpful, they are destructive. They do not want peace, they just want their safe space codified. And sorry to say this to my trans brothers and sisters, people like this fuck up a lot for you. Do I think trans kids at 10 years old should be participating in that? No. If you're a grown adult, do whatever you want with your dick. That's your dick. It ain't my dick. And I will continue to say that because, hey, grown adult, grown adult. Child is child. And I don't think they're really equipped to be in that scenario. And when you have scientists hiding that information that would be beneficial to what I just said, congratulations. The freaks are going to see that and start bashing trans people even more. So great job. You solved nothing and you made it a lot worse for everybody else. But let me know in the comments. Do you agree with doctors hiding information because they're personal fifis and how they're afraid of being criticized? Or even if it wasn't something that would benefit you, would you still release that to the public? Because people deserve to know information that they were clearly pining for. Subscribe to the channel. I will see you all in the next one. Mwah. Talking about detransitioning is not trans fucking phobic.